In a far and distant alien city built from black stone and glowing green metal, the streets were crowded with creatures from many species cheering, laughing, shouting like they were celebrating a festival, and at the center of that busy marketplace stood a giant metal cage raised high on a platform like some kind of trophy, and inside that cold steel cage sat 3 small human children huddled close together, shaking, crying, their faces covered in dust, their clothes torn, their eyes full of fear and confusion because they did not understand where they were or why they were trapped. And around the cage, alien guards wearing heavy armor paced back and forth, holding electric spears and laughing loudly, pointing at the children, calling them pets, calling them animals, calling them property. And the onlookers joined the mockery, some taking pictures, some throwing pieces of food at the cage, some tapping the bars to watch the children flinch. And every alien in that crowd believed the same thing, that Earth was gone, that humans were extinct, wiped out long ago during the final wars, and because of that belief they felt no fear, no guilt, no shame. They thought no one was left to care, no one was left to protect these children, no one was left to avenge them. And the youngest child, a tiny girl with messy hair, clutched her older brother's arm, her voice breaking as she whispered, "I want to go home," but her brother, who could barely hold back his own tears, could only shake his head because he didn't know where home was anymore. He didn't even know if home still existed. And the third child, a boy slightly older than the others, stared through the bars, silent, his eyes dark and empty, like he was trying to stay strong, but his trembling hands showed the truth. He was scared just like them. And above the cage, a massive holographic sign flashed words in alien language, property of the Zurak Empire, and the crowd cheered for their empire, proud that they had captured something rare, something valuable, because in this part of the galaxy, human bodies were sold secretly to scientists, warlords, and collectors like rare artifacts, and the Zurak Empire planned to auction these 3 children to the highest bidder to earn power and profit. And the guards talked proudly about how humans were used for experiments, how their bodies were strong, how their minds were strange, how their DNA was priceless. And the crowd nodded because they all believed humans were nothing but animals now, but deep, deep inside their hearts there was a small fear, a fear they never spoke out loud, a fear passed down through legend and history, a fear whispered in old stories told to children long ago, stories that said never harm a human, because humans were not like other species. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, unstoppable. And long ago, when humans were still present in the galaxy, they did something so powerful, so terrifying, that every species agreed on one silent rule: do not touch human children. But over time, the galaxy forgot the power of that rule, and when they believed humans were extinct, they laughed at the old fear, they erased the warnings, they mocked the legends, until today, when the rule was broken and the 3 children began crying louder. The ground beneath the cage trembled just slightly, at first so small that most ignored it, thinking it was only machinery or construction noise, but then the trembling grew stronger, stronger, until dust fell from rooftops, and small cracks rippled across the stone courtyard, and some aliens paused their laughter and frowned, looking around in confusion, wondering if it was an earthquake, wondering if something was wrong. And suddenly a loud alarm blasted through the sky, a deafening wail that echoed across the entire city, making every creature flinch and look upward as massive red warning lights lit up the skyscrapers, and the holographic billboards flickered and shifted to emergency screens, and in giant bold letters across every screen in every building appeared a single shocking message: human life detected. And the entire marketplace fell silent, not a laugh, not a breath, not a single whisper for a full burning second, because those 3 words were not normal, those 3 words were forbidden, those 3 words were ancient. Fear awakened, and then the crowd began to panic, voices shaking, asking, how can humans be detected? What does it mean? How is it possible? Didn't Earth die? Didn't humans disappear? Didn't the last human colony burn? And the guards stared at each other, their arrogant grins fading, their skin turning pale as their hands shook on their weapons, because they knew the stories, they knew what that detection meant. It meant something alive out there, something human had awakened. And the air grew colder, heavier, like a storm was building far beyond the sky. And one alien merchant backed away from the cage, mumbling, "This is wrong, this is cursed, we should not have taken them." But others tried to calm themselves, telling each other it was nothing, maybe a glitch, maybe a system error, maybe an old satellite. But then the screens across the city began to flicker faster, glitching with static, as if something powerful was interfering with the signal. And suddenly the words "human life detected" changed into a pulsing red symbol, a symbol no one had seen for over 200 years, a circle of fire around a single black star, the ancient insignia of humanity, the mark that once appeared only during war, only when humans prepared to strike. And the moment that symbol lit up the sky, a chilling wave of dread washed through the crowd, and every alien felt it, not in their minds but in their bones, a warning deeper than logic, older than memory. And an old elder creature standing near the front of the crowd dropped to his knees, trembling, and whispered in a shaky voice, "We broke the law, we touched human young." And others stared at him wide-eyed, demanding what law, what rule, what threat. But the elder only stared at the children, tears forming in his ancient eyes and whispered softly, "You never harm human children, never, never, never," because long ago the galaxy learned what happens when you do, and the people around him began shaking because the legends were vague, the records erased, but the emotion remained, the terror remained, the memory of an unstoppable force, the memory of a war no one could win, the memory of humanity unleashed, and suddenly the cage rattled, its metal bars vibrating loudly, as if something unseen had struck it, something powerful, something angry, and the children screamed, huddling together while the guards jumped back in shock, trying to steady themselves, but the cage shook again, harder this time, as the ground beneath it cracked open slightly, sending dust and sparks into the air, and the crowd staggered backward, whispers growing louder, full of fear instead of mockery, and above them the sky darkened, not like night, not like clouds, but like something massive was blocking the sun, something enormous drifting overhead. Unseen, and one alien soldier lifted a scanner with trembling hands, pointing it toward the sky, but the screen showed nothing, nothing at all, no ship, no life form, no engine, no signal, and that made the fear worse, because if something that big was above them and yet invisible, then it was technology far beyond theirs, maybe beyond anything in the galaxy, and the soldier dropped the scanner, his voice breaking, "This is impossible," and then the ground vibrated again like a giant heartbeat pulsing through the city, and the cage's metal bars bent slightly inward as if pulled by an invisible force, and the youngest child cried, "Mama, Mama, please," and that small voice pierced every heart in the crowd because it was innocent, it was helpless. It was real, and in that moment every alien realized. They were not looking at animals, they were looking at children, real living children, and the guilt hit some of them sharp and sudden like a blade of ice, and one creature in the crowd whispered, "Oh no, what have we done?" and silence fell again, heavy, suffocating, as sparks fell from the screens and the hologram above the cage distorted into static, and then a deep, distant rumble rolled across the sky, a sound like thunder but heavier, and the elder whispered, again, voice shaking, "If humans are alive, humanity will return," and those words spread through the crowd like wildfire, terrifying every mind, because the galaxy believed humans were gone, but if even a single human survived, then the ancient pact still held, and the consequences would be unimaginable, and suddenly the cage's lock glowed red, then burst into sparks as if hacked, overridden by a force beyond their control, and the door swung open just a few inches, and the guards stumbled backward in terror because they didn't open it, and no one nearby touched it, and the air around the cage grew electric, buzzing with unseen energy, and the children stared at the opening, not daring to move, too scared to trust anything, and above them the symbol in the sky pulsed brighter, brighter, until it became a burning red warning, filling the entire skyline like an omen, and then in a voice that was not shouted but echoed inside every mind in the city, a voice calm, cold, terrifying, spoke only two words, "Return them," and every alien dropped to their knees, gasping, clutching their heads, because the voice wasn't spoken through speakers, it wasn't spoken through sound, it was inside them, like a command, like a sentence, like the first whisper of a storm millions of years old. And when the voice faded, the city was silent, silent like death, silent like the breath before war, and the guards backed away from the cage, shaking their heads, weapons falling from their hands, because for the first time in their lives they understood the truth. The galaxy may have forgotten humans, but humans had not forgotten the galaxy, and now something was coming, something unseen, unstoppable, furious, not for revenge, but for one reason only, because someone dared to cage human children. As the echo of that cold command, "Return them," faded from every mind, the entire city seemed to stop breathing, the wind froze, the crowds turned into statues, and even the glowing streetlights flickered like they were afraid, and the three human children sat in the half-open cage, shaking so hard their teeth chattered, the smallest girl gripping her brother's torn sleeve, whispering in a tiny broken voice, "Are we going to die?" And her brother tried to be strong, tried to swallow his terror, but his voice cracked as he whispered, "I don't know, I don't know, I don't know." And the third child, the oldest one, stared at the open cage door, his wide eyes wet with tears, but behind the fear there was a spark, something desperate, something hurting, something that said, "Don't touch us." Again, and outside the cage, the alien guards who moments ago laughed and mocked now stumbled backward like cowards, dropping their spears, their legs shaking violently, because in their hearts a horrible truth was rising. They had broken the one rule the galaxy swore never to break, and now something was coming to collect the price, and the senior guard tried to give an order, but his voice came out broken as he shouted, "Lock it, lock the cage, do something," but when he reached for the door, the metal burned his hand with a sudden flash of red energy, searing his skin, and he screamed, stumbling backward in pain, because the door was no longer under their control, it belonged to something else, something unseen, something angry, and the crowd behind them exploded into chaos, aliens pushing, shoving, screaming, running in every direction, some shouting, "Get away from them, get away from the humans before it's too late," and others sobbing, "No, no, no, this can't be real, humanity is extinct, humanity is gone," but no one could escape the crushing terror growing heavier in the air like a storm pressing on their chests, making it hard to breathe, making every heartbeat feel like a countdown, and through that chaos the ground trembled again, not like before, not small, not soft, but a violent deep quake that cracked the pavement beneath the platform, sending long black fractures racing across the courtyard like claws ripping the earth open, and buildings shook, windows shattered, alarms wailed across the rooftops, and creatures fell to their knees, grabbing the ground as if the whole world was about to split apart. And then all at once the city lights died, plunging everything into a suffocating darkness so heavy that even the stars above vanished, swallowed by some unseen force, and in that total darkness the only sound was the trembling breath of children crying in the cage and the fast panicked heartbeat of every alien in the square. And then without warning a blinding red light exploded across the sky like a burning wound, tearing open the heavens, and every alien looked up with wide, terrified eyes as a giant holographic projection flickered into existence, towering over the city, showing a symbol they hoped they would never see again, the mark of humanity glowing like fire against the black sky. And beneath that symbol a message began to pulse across every screen, every tower, every wall: human presence, confirmed, human children under threat, human retrieval protocol activating. And when those words flashed, the entire crowd let out a united gasp of fear, because no one knew what a retrieval protocol was, but every instinct, every legend, every nightmare told them it meant something terrible, something unstoppable, something that would not negotiate. And one alien scientist collapsed onto the ground, his voice shaking violently as he whispered, they warned us, in the old records they said if human young are harmed, if they are taken, humanity will return and nothing will survive their path. And when he spoke those words, the memory seemed to awaken in others, because fragments of suppressed history surged through their minds, old destroyed archives, old erased stories, old forbidden truths about humans who once fought entire empires and did not lose, humans who once vanished not because they were weak but because they chose to leave the galaxy alone. And the senior guard screamed at the remaining soldiers, take the children, move them now, hide them before the humans arrive. But as soon as he reached toward the cage bars, something invisible slammed him into a wall with bone-shattering force, sending him crashing to the ground, blood pouring from his mouth as he whimpered, it's here, something is here. And the other soldiers froze in horror, gripping their weapons but shaking too hard to aim because they could feel it too, a presence in the air like invisible eyes watching them, like unseen footsteps drawing closer, like the universe itself shifting its weight toward this one small cage. And the children felt it too, the oldest boy looking around in the darkness whispering, I can feel someone, I can feel something coming. And the little girl sobbed, holding her brother's hand tighter like she was clinging to the last piece of safety she had left. And then the cage door creaked further open, pushed by no hand, no wind, no force they could see, and the metal screeched softly like a warning, like a voice saying run, run now. But the children were too weak, too scared, too lost to move. And in that moment something happened that made the entire city scream. The sky above them split open like a black curtain, ripping apart, revealing a massive swirling red vortex as if space itself had been torn into a wound. And from deep inside that vortex erupted a sound, not loud but cold, a voice not human but carrying the weight of billions of memories. You broke the forbidden law. And every creature in the city dropped to their knees, clutching their heads, crying out, because the voice wasn't heard in their ears, it was heard inside their minds like a blade slicing through their thoughts. And the vortex grew wider, 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 until something enormous began to materialize within its swirling light, a dark shape, a colossal silhouette, a presence so massive that even the largest buildings felt small and fragile beneath it. And the eldest child stared up, eyes wide with terror, his voice barely a whisper, what is that? And far below on the ground an old alien elder trembled and answered in a voice full of ancient fear that is consequences. And as the vortex thundered across the sky, the entire galaxy felt one truth crash through their hearts like a falling star. Humanity was not extinct, humanity was not defeated, humanity was coming back, and it was coming for its children. The vortex in the sky twisted like a giant bleeding wound across the heavens, growing bigger and darker until it swallowed the stars themselves, and every alien in the city stared upward with shaking bodies, because whatever was coming through that tear in the sky was not a ship, not a storm, not anything they could name. It was a presence, a force, a shadow older than their empires and heavier than their wars. And the air turned thick, impossible to breathe, as if the atmosphere itself was bowing to something far stronger. And inside the half-open cage the three human children clung to each other, the youngest girl burying her face into her brother's shoulder, sobbing softly, while the oldest boy stared at the sky, eyes wide, trembling lips whispering, someone is coming for us, someone is coming. And he didn't know how he knew that, he just felt it deep in his chest like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him, a heartbeat calling to something beyond the sky. And around the cage the guards tried to lift their weapons, but their arms shook too violently and several dropped their guns, as if something invisible had sucked the strength from their bones. And the senior guard crawled backward across the ground, his eyes huge with Terror as he whispered, "No, no, no, this can't be real, humanity can't be alive, they promised, they disappeared, they vanished," and his voice cracked because he realized too late that humans never disappeared, they simply waited, and above them the vortex thundered again, sending shockwaves rippling through the air powerful enough to shatter windows and knock bystanders off their feet, and the buildings groaned as massive cracks crawled along their walls like veins of fear, spreading through stone and metal. And then every screen in the city flickered to life, covered in static, before clearing into a single terrifying image, a black mask smooth and featureless with two glowing white eyes staring directly into every living soul, and a voice cold, calm, emotionless spoke from every direction, not through speakers, not through sound, but directly into their minds. "You took what is sacred," and those words felt like iron melting into their skulls because everyone knew exactly what the voice meant: human children. And then the voice said something even more chilling. The law was written in blood, and images flashed across the screens, rapid, horrifying flashes of ancient battles, human soldiers standing against entire fleets, worlds burning, armies falling one after another until the galaxy surrendered, and every alien in the city cried out in fear, clutching their heads as the voice continued, "And you forgot," and the screens went black, leaving only silence, a silence so deep it felt like the world had died. And then the vortex pulsed once, twice, three times, like a giant heart beating faster and faster, until something began to emerge from its depths, a colossal black shape with sharp angles and burning red veins, a ship, but not like any ship in the galaxy. This one looked alive, breathing, its hull shifting like muscle under armor, and as it fully pushed through the rift, the sky turned red, lightning crackled across the clouds, and the ground vibrated so violently several aliens fell to their knees, sobbing, "This is the end, this is the end," and the ship hovered silently above the city, casting a shadow so vast it drowned entire districts in darkness, and the temperature dropped like winter had suddenly fallen, and the youngest child shivered, whispering through tears, "I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared," and her brother held her tight, whispering, it's okay, someone heard us, someone finally heard us." And down below the guards scrambled away from the cage, some trying to run but collapsing as their legs buckled, because the air pressure around them grew crushing heavy, as if the ship was pressing its judgment onto their bodies, and the old elder creature near the front of the square shook violently as he bowed his head to the ground, whispering a broken truth: "The humans are not extinct, the humans were waiting." And as if responding to his words, the ship shifted its massive form, and a beam of deep red light shot down from its underside, landing directly on the cage, illuminating the children in a blood-colored glow, and the bar door swung fully open without a sound, and for a single horrifying moment no one moved, not the guards, not the crowd, not even the children, because the weight of that moment felt like the universe holding its breath. And then a deep echoing voice rolled out from the ship's core, a voice full of a pain so ancient it felt like the cry of a wounded planet. They cried for help, and the guards trembled more violently, because they knew what was coming. The voice thundered again, and no one answered, and in that sentence was the accusation of 1,000 forgotten pleas, 1,000 ignored screams, 1,000 abandoned worlds, and the crowd began to sob openly, some falling onto their hands, begging for mercy, begging for forgiveness, begging for a miracle. And inside the cage, the oldest boy slowly stepped forward, his small fists clenched, his eyes burning with tears and fear and something else, something like relief. Because for the first time since they were taken, he felt it deep in his heart, we're not alone anymore. And as he stepped out of the cage, the red beam around him flickered brighter, brighter, like it was recognizing him, scanning him, marking him. And when his foot touched the ground outside the cage, a shockwave of energy blasted outward from the ship, sending a roaring pulse across the city that knocked everyone to the ground except the three children, who stood untouched in a circle of calm at the center of chaos. And the voice spoke again, this time quieter but heavier, like a promise: "Every action has consequences." And those words echoed through the ruins of shattered glass, through the broken streets, through the hearts of every living creature, until one terrified alien whispered, "What consequences? What will they do?" And the elder answered with tears streaming down his face, "The humans will return, and when they do, nothing in this galaxy will ever be the same." And as the ship's red glow intensified, forming patterns like a burning signal rising into the sky, the truth settled over the city like a nightmare becoming real. Humanity was back, and it was coming for its children. The red glow pouring from the colossal ship spread across the sky like liquid fire, turning clouds into burning embers and casting the entire city in a blood-colored light that made every alien's skin crawl with a terror they could not explain. And as the beam tightened around the three human children, the air itself began to vibrate like a living scream trapped inside the atmosphere, and every creature in the square felt their hearts pounding too fast, too loud, as if something was squeezing their chests from the inside. And the youngest girl clung to her brother, sobbing, "Please take us home, please take us home," her tiny voice breaking like glass in the heavy silence. And the oldest boy stared up at the massive ship, his lips trembling, his eyes wide, not with fear now but with something fragile, something aching something like hope, because for the first time since their capture he felt a presence watching him, protecting him, answering him, and that tiny spark of hope terrified the guards even more than the ship itself, because if humans still hoped then humans still lived, and if humans still lived then the galaxy's greatest nightmare was waking. And the senior guard crawled backward on shaking hands, screaming into his communicator, "Send a message to the palace, call the army, call the fleet, we need backup, we need protection." But the communicator in his clawed hand sparked once, then melted into molten metal dripping between his fingers, as if the universe itself was rejecting any attempt to fight what was coming. And one by one every device in the city shattered, screens cracked, weapons dissolved, drones fell from the sky like dead birds, alarms choked into silence, until all that remained was the growing hum of the warship above them. And in that terrible quiet the ground gave a violent jolt, splitting the earth beneath the platform, the cage sinking slightly into the widening cracks, and terrified aliens scrambled away, falling over each other like desperate animals fleeing a predator, because they all felt it, a force rising from deep underground like an ancient heartbeat waking for the first time in centuries. And the old elder who had whispered the warning before collapsed to his knees, tears streaming down his wrinkled face as he whispered, "The old law is alive, the vow is alive, the humans are calling their storm." And his words sent a cold ripple of horror through every soul, because no one knew what that meant, but everyone knew it was too late to undo anything. And suddenly every screen in the city flickered back on, glowing with a flickering white light, and then a face appeared, not a face of meat or bone, but a pale metallic mask with empty black eyes staring out with soulless silence, and a voice spoke from it, calm, emotionless, carved from ice. "You broke the covenant," and those 5 words hit every heart like a hammer, because covenant meant agreement, covenant meant warning, covenant meant promise. And the senior guard stuttered, voice shaking, "Covenant, what promise?" But the voice continued, "The galaxy swore to protect human children above all life." And gasps spread through the crowd, because some had heard fragments of this in forbidden history, some had read whispered lines in erased books, some had seen secret files before they vanished. And the voice thundered again, "And you defied the law." And the sky roared in response, lightning ripping across the horizon like veins of rage, and the city trembled so violently that towers swayed and shattered windows rained shards like falling stars, and the children flinched as the beams of red light around them began to twist like spiraling flames, forming symbols in the air, symbols no alien recognized, but every instinct screamed they were human runes, ancient marks older than empires, carved into the fabric of memory. And one scientist in the crowd crawled backward, shaking his head, screaming, "This is not science, this is vengeance, this is a warning, this is the end." And before anyone could respond, the massive ship lowered slightly, its engines glowing with unnatural power, as a dark circular hatch slowly opened on its underside, and a thick swirling mist poured out, spilling across the sky like a ghostly waterfall drifting downward toward the city. And when that mist touched the ground, the stone cracked, the metal corroded, the air froze, turning into icy shards, and every alien who tried to run through the mist collapsed screaming, as their bodies were paralyzed by an unseen force, held in place like insects trapped in amber. And the children remained untouched, the mist curling gently around them like a protective barrier, like arms shielding them from harm, as if the universe itself recognized their innocence. And suddenly a loud cracking sound echoed from above, as a long shadow detached from the ship, something falling, something descending, something shaped like a figure, tall, armored, heavy, cloaked in black, as it slowly dropped toward the ground. And every alien's heart stopped, because they knew instantly, without needing proof, without needing explanation, this was a human, not a legend, not a ghost, not a myth, but a real living human. And the figure landed in the courtyard with a thunderous impact, the ground shaking, the cracks widening, dust exploding outward in a violent wave, and the mist drew back as if bowing to the newcomer. And the armored figure rose slowly, standing tall, silent, terrifying, its helmet reflecting the red sky like a grieving star. And in the children's wide, terrified eyes, that figure was hope and fear combined. And the youngest girl whispered in a quivering breath, Is that one of us?" And the armored figure took one slow step forward, the metal boots echoing like death in the silent square, and those heavy footsteps felt like the countdown of a clock marking the end of an era. And every alien in the city lowered their heads, without being told, without thinking, because their instincts, their history, their blood remembered what humans were, what humans did, what humans could become. And the armored figure's voice finally broke the silence, soft but heavy like a funeral bell, "You caged our children." And the words struck like a blade, slicing through every lie, every excuse, every forgotten truth. And a whimper rose from the crowd as the figure spoke again, voice trembling not with rage but with heartbreak. They called for help, and no one came. And the figure's helmet tilted up slightly toward the ship, as if looking at a grave, and in its voice there was a pain so deep, so raw, that even the children felt it, and their eyes filled with tears, because they suddenly understood this human was not just a rescuer, not just a warrior, but someone carrying the grief of an entire species. And the armored figure turned toward the cage, its steps slow, reverent, like approaching something sacred. And The children stood frozen, too scared to move, too overwhelmed to speak, and when the figure reached them it slowly knelt, lowering itself until its helmet was level with the children, and for the first time its voice softened into something fragile, broken. "You are safe now," and the little girl burst into tears, collapsing forward into the figure's arms, sobbing, "I thought no one would come, I thought we were alone," and the figure wrapped a trembling arm around her, whispering through a voice full of pain, "You will never be alone again." And as that vow echoed across the courtyard, something inside the warship roared to life, the sky flashing with a violent surge of red light, as if humanity itself had just awakened from a century of silence, and far beyond the city, beyond the planet, beyond the stars, 1,000 hidden signals ignited like fire across the dark, and one terrifying truth spread through the galaxy like thunder: humanity was back, not as myth, not as memory, not as rumor, but as a force rising. And their first act was not destruction but protection, and yet every trembling alien knew the same chilling question hung in the air: what happens next when a wounded species finally returns to collect the cost of every scar? The courtyard lay frozen in a fearful silence as the armored human held the smallest child close, the other two standing inches away, staring up at the figure with trembling hope, like someone drowning staring at the first breath of air after endless darkness. While all around them the alien citizens knelt, collapsed, or hid their faces in shaking hands, because none of them had ever expected to see a real human. Not in their lifetime, not after 2 centuries of silence, and now that one stood before them, every legend, every warning, every nightmare felt real, alive, and waiting, and the mist that had crawled across the city shifted back as if giving space to the human, almost like it recognized a master, and the red light from the warship above dimmed into a deep pulsing glow, like a heartbeat syncing with the human below, and the armored figure slowly rose to full height, turning its helmet toward the crowd, toward every terrified soul, and its voice echoed again, low and heavy, like the weight of 1,000,000 graves. "You celebrated their fear," and those words struck like stone dropped into the sea of silence, sending a ripple of guilt so strong that several aliens choked on their breath, remembering how they had laughed earlier, how they had mocked, how they had pointed fingers at shaking children who had just wanted to go home. And the armored figure stepped forward, each footstep thundering through the cracked earth. Not fast, not frantic, but controlled, steady, terrifying in its calm. And with every step the aliens backed away, their instincts screaming run but their bodies refusing to move, frozen by something older than fear, something like recognition, because deep in their bones they knew humans were not prey. Never had been, never could be, and the eldest child wiped his tears with the back of his hand, staring at the figure with a mixture of awe and confusion, whispering through shaky breath, are you here for us?" And the armored human paused, turning slightly toward him, and for a moment the silence felt like a held breath, a fragile space suspended between pain and hope, and the human answered in a voice that cracked ever so slightly, "We came for all of you," and that word, "we," sent chills through every alien spine, because it meant this human was not alone, not a survivor, not a stray echo of a lost species. It meant there were more. It meant humanity existed. It meant humanity was awake. And somewhere deep in the city a terrified voice screamed their back, and the scream spread like wildfire through the streets as panic erupted. Aliens scrambling in every direction, some collapsing from terror, others trying to flee even though their legs shook too violently to run. And alarms tried to activate again. But every device sparked and died, as if the warship had taken control of every circuit, every signal, every system, leaving the planet deaf and blind, trapped under human silence. And the armored figure turned its helmet upward toward the massive ship and spoke softly, like speaking to a wounded friend. "They took our innocence," and as if answering that grief, the warship's glowing veins flared brighter, pulsing with a deep aching rage that made the sky rumble with distant thunder. And then the human slowly raised one hand, palm open, toward the ship, and a beam of soft red light descended around the children, forming a protective sphere that lifted them gently into the air, carrying them toward the armored human's chest like a shield forming around them. And the little girl clung to the figure's arm, burying her face into its armor, whispering, "I was so scared. I thought no one would ever come." And the armored human's voice shook with emotion as it replied, "You should never have had to. Be brave." And those words hit like a knife to every alien heart because they revealed a truth too painful to deny. The humans were not angry because their species was threatened. They were angry because their children had been made to suffer, and suffering was something humans never forgot, never forgave, never allowed to go unanswered. And far above, a second, deeper rumble echoed across the sky, and every alien froze as the warship's underbelly shifted, plates sliding open like the jaws of some ancient beast waking from centuries of sleep, revealing thousands of glowing lines that stretched across its hull like veins preparing to burst, and a terrified scientist gasped in horror as he whispered, I know what that is. That's a planetary judgment system, an old rumored weapon humans once built, something capable of erasing entire civilizations without firing a single shot, not through destruction, but through shutdown, locking every machine, every weapon, every fleet until nothing could move, nothing could fight, nothing could breathe, and the armored human turned its head slightly, voice dropping into something cold and final. The galaxy took our children and called it victory. And with that the warship let out a deep reverberating pulse, a soundless shockwave that rippled across the atmosphere, invisible yet undeniable, and instantly every weapon in the city melted into liquid metal. Every drone fell lifeless to the streets. Every armored vehicle collapsed like empty shells. Every fighter ship in orbit powered down, drifting helplessly as if gravity itself had abandoned them, and the aliens screamed in terror because this wasn't violence. This wasn't blood. This wasn't revenge. This was control, total, absolute control, the kind only a desperate species could forge, the kind only heartbreak could design. And the armored human spoke again, voice trembling but firm, we do not come to kill but to carry their pain back to you. And as those words echoed across the silent city, the eldest child reached out and touched the armored human's hand, whispering in a trembling voice, thank you, and that simple thank you made the warship's glow soften, like a wound easing, like a scar remembering warmth for the first time in centuries. And for a moment, just a moment, the galaxy felt something impossible, hope, but then the ground shook violently again as a massive roar erupted from the sky, and the armored human's helmet snapped upward because through the warship sensors something new had arrived, something massive, something hostile, dozens of alien battleships belonging to the Zurak Empire dropping out of warp, weapons aimed at the planet, engines burning. Bright with rage, and a booming voice crackled across the air, this is Zurak Command, release our property or face extinction. And every alien in the city froze in horror because even they knew the Zurak Empire had no idea what they had just declared. And the armored human took one slow step forward, its body shielding the children as its voice dropped into something colder than space. You caged our children and called them property. And then, with a calm that chilled the universe, the human whispered the sentence that marked the true beginning of consequences, you have no idea what you've just started. And above them, responding like a heartbeat answering rage, the warship began to awaken its true power. The Zurak warships filled the sky like a swarm of burning metal shadows, their engines roaring, their weapons glowing with deadly light, and the entire planet trembled under their arrival, as if even the ground knew a disaster far greater than anything before had just begun. And below in the shattered courtyard, every alien stared upward with hollow eyes, because they understood one terrible truth: the Zurak Empire was not here to negotiate, not here to explain, not here to apologize. They were here to keep their prize, their property, and they would destroy anything in their path, even the city, even their own people, just to keep 3 terrified human children in a cage. And the armored human standing between the children and the sky lifted its head slowly, the red glow of the warship reflecting across its visor like a burning sunrise, and inside that helmet there was no panic, no hesitation, only a quiet pain, a quiet fury, a quiet resolve born from centuries of silence and loss. And the smallest child tightened her grip on the human's arm, her tiny voice shaking, are we safe? And the human answered without looking away from the sky, voice low but firm, you are safe with us. And that single us made every alien in the courtyard shake, because it confirmed the fear clawing inside their hearts. This human was not alone, this warship was not the only one, this was not the end, this was the beginning. And above them the Zurak flagship crackled with harsh metallic laughter before broadcasting a message across the city: humans are gone, you are a ghost, we own what you abandoned. And those words hit like poison, like disrespect, like a knife to a wound that had never healed. And the armored human slowly raised one hand toward the sky, palm open, almost gentle, almost sorrowful, and whispered, we never abandoned our children. And the moment those words left the human's lips, the warship above responded, its veins igniting with violent red light, as if the ship's heart had been struck awake by pure grief, pure rage, pure memory. And a deep rumble rolled across the sky, shaking the air, shaking the buildings, shaking every heartbeat in every chest. And the Zurak commanders barked orders: fire, fire, destroy that ship. And 100 beams of plasma and missiles shot downward toward the massive human. Warships streaking through the red clouds like falling stars, and every alien in the courtyard screamed thinking they would all die in the next heartbeat, but the warship did not move, did not dodge, did not shield, it simply pulsed once, a soft dim pulse like a breath, and in an instant every Zurak weapon froze midair, hanging motionless, as if trapped in ice, time itself bending around the warship's will, and the missiles began to shudder, crack, split apart, dissolving into dust that rained harmlessly across the sky, and the Zurak captains screamed, "Impossible, impossible, what technology is this?" And the armored human lowered its hand slowly, voice trembling not with pride but with heartbreak. "You aimed weapons at children," and the warship's veins flared brighter, brighter, until its entire hull glowed like a star about to collapse, and a low mournful sound echoed from deep within it, a sound like a sob made of steel and fire, the sound of a species that had suffered too long. And as the sound rolled across the Zurak fleet, their ships flickered one by one, engines dying power, failing, lights going dark, until dozens of their massive vessels hung dead and silent in the sky like corpses suspended by invisible strings, and panic erupted across Zurak channels, their commanders shouting, "Reboot systems, restart engines, fire weapons," but nothing responded, nothing obeyed, nothing moved, and in the courtyard a scientist dropped to the ground shaking his head, tears falling as he whispered, "They didn't build a warship, they built a warning, a promise forged in grief." And the armored human took one step forward, its voice suddenly raw, almost cracking. "Humanity asked for peace, humanity begged for safety, humanity cried out for help, and no one listened." And those words hit the air like thunder, shattering whatever arrogance the Zurak Empire had left, and from the flagship a furious voice shrieked, "Humans are extinct, you are a relic, you have no power here." And the armored human turned slowly, its helmet tilting slightly, as if it could see the face behind that voice, see the cruelty, see the pride, see the ignorance, and it whispered, with a voice trembling from centuries of buried sorrow, "You heard our young." And in that instant every Zurak ship across the sky began to shake violently, their hulls warping, their metal groaning, as if crushed by invisible hands, and alarms screamed across their decks, warning, core failure, system lockdown. And Zurak soldiers cried out in terror, because the warship wasn't destroying them, it was stripping them of control, crushing their weapons, their engines, their pride, with nothing but silence. And the armored human spoke again, softer, almost like a grieving parent, "Humanity's greatest law was never ours alone, it was meant for every species to honor, protect the innocent, protect the helpless, protect the children, and you broke it." And the youngest child tugged at the human's arm, whispering through tears, "Make them stop, please make them stop." And for the first time a tremor of emotion shook the armored figure's voice as it answered, "I will." And the warship finally moved, its massive form rotating slowly until its underbelly faced the Zurak fleet, and the sky grew darker, darker, as if space itself was folding inward, as if reality was bracing for something ancient, sacred, unstoppable. And every alien in the courtyard felt it deep in their bones that what was coming was not revenge, not cruelty, not destruction, but consequence. And the Zurak commander screamed, "No, you can't do this, we are an empire." And the armored human whispered back, "You are an empire that caged children." And with that final truth the warship unleashed its core, a silent eruption of red light that spread across the sky like a tidal wave, consuming every Zurak ship, touching them gently but with absolute judgment. And one by one the warships vanished, not exploding, not burning, not falling, simply erased from existence, like they had never been, like the universe itself refused to remember them. And the courtyard fell into impossible silence, a silence so deep it felt like the first breath after death. And the armored human lowered its head, shoulders trembling, as if the act had cost something heavy, something painful. And the eldest child whispered softly, "Are they gone?" And the human answered, voice breaking, "They will never hurt you again." And in that sentence, in that trembling vow, the galaxy changed forever, because for the first time in 200 years humanity had spoken, not as myth, not as ghost, but as a force that would burn the stars before letting a single child cry alone again. The sky hung empty and silent where the Zurak fleet had been moments before. Not a single burning wreck, not a falling ember, not even smoke. Just nothing. A clean blank space, as if the universe itself had erased their existence like chalk wiped from a board. And that terrible quiet was more horrifying than any explosion, because it proved one truth beyond doubt. Humanity did not need violence to win. Humanity did not need blood to end a threat. Humanity only needed a decision, and once that decision was made, reality obeyed. Down below, the alien citizens stared upward with hollow, shaking eyes, their minds struggling to understand what they had seen, their hearts pounding with something worse than fear, guilt, because the Zurak ships had died not for war, not for conquest, but for a crime everyone had ignored, everyone had allowed, everyone had cheered. The armored humans stood motionless in the center of the shattered courtyard. The three children gathered close around its legs, their small bodies still trembling, their tiny hands clinging to the only safety they had left in a universe that had once abandoned them. The little girl wiped tears with her dusty fist and asked in a fragile whisper, "Are we going home now?" And that question pierced the air like a blade because home, a word so small, carried centuries of pain, loss, silence. The armored figure lowered its head, and though no face could be seen behind the helmet, every alien felt the shift, the weight, the ache, as the human whispered softly, almost breaking, "We will take you home, if home still stands." And those last 4 words struck the children like thunder, their eyes widening with a new fear. Not of aliens, not of cages, but of the possibility that Earth, the world they remembered in fading memories, might be gone forever. The oldest boy swallowed hard, his voice tiny but desperate. Did they hurt Earth too? And the armored human didn't answer. Not because it didn't know, but because the truth was too heavy to speak, and silence can sometimes carry more pain than words. Around them, the alien soldiers, those who had mocked, laughed, jeered, now knelt with their heads bowed so low their foreheads touched the broken ground, as if they were trying to hide from their own shame, as if the weight of what they had done was finally crushing them, and one trembling guard whispered, "We didn't know, we didn't think humans were real, we didn't think anyone would come." And the armored human turned toward him, each step echoing like a slow, merciless heartbeat, until it stood before the guard who shook like a child before a storm. The human spoke quietly, not loud, not angry, but with a pain so deep it felt like the voice of every lost human colony, every unanswered distress call, every child who cried in the dark with no one listening. "You didn't think anyone would come, because no one came for us?" And the guard broke into sobs, collapsing fully to the ground, whispering over and over, "Forgive us, forgive us, forgive us." But the armored figure only whispered, "Forgiveness is not mine to give." And as those words fell, the warship above shifted, plates sliding like tectonic armor, its glowing veins dimming from rage into something quieter, something heavier, sorrow. The sky darkened again, but this time not with power, not with threat, but with memory, as thousands of holographic images suddenly flickered into the air above the city, projected from the warship's core. Burning human colonies, shattered ships drifting in silence, abandoned settlements filled with toys and shoes and tiny beds left behind by children who never returned, and every alien gazed upward, tears spilling down faces they never thought could feel regret, as the truth poured over them, like cold rain. Humans didn't disappear, they were hunted. Humans didn't vanish, they were betrayed. Humans didn't go extinct, they were alone, crying into a galaxy that turned its back. The armored human raised an arm, and the warship's projection changed, now showing something even worse, thousands of unanswered distress signals sent from Earth's outer colonies, each message carrying the same desperate words spoken by terrified human voices. "Please, someone help us. We are under attack. They are taking our children. Is anyone out there?" And then silence, a silence that lasted generations. A silence that carved humanity into something steel-hard and grief-shaped. The children stared at the holograms, tears shining in their eyes, and the little girl whispered. No one answered, and the armored human knelt beside her, voice trembling. No one answered. So we became the answer. The warship pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat returning after centuries of numbness, and a ripple of red energy swept gently across the city, not to harm, but to mark, to record, to judge, and glowing marks appeared on the ground around every alien who had laughed at the children earlier, symbols like scars burned into the stone, while others, those who had looked away in guilt or fear, remained unmarked, and one scientist gasped in horror. "It's recording who was complicit." The armored human rose slowly, holding the smallest child's hand, and its voice, now calm and terrifyingly steady, filled the air. "Not all will be punished, only those who chose cruelty." The crowd trembled, some collapsing, others sobbing in relief, others in terror because justice, not revenge, was somehow worse. Then the warship emitted a new signal, one the galaxy had not heard in 200 years. A call, a beacon, a summoning, and across the distant stars, hundreds, no thousands, of identical signals flared to life like stars waking from sleep, and every alien in the courtyard felt their blood freeze as the truth crashed down on them like a falling moon. This was not the only ship. Humanity was not alone. The armored human looked toward the heavens, voice low, steady, final. They caged our children, and the galaxy will answer for it. And far beyond the planet's atmosphere, space rippled like water, and the first shapes of approaching human fleets began to appear. The consequences had only begun. The sky began to change again, not with fire, not with lightning, but with something far more terrifying: movement, thousands of tiny ripples spreading across the blackness of space like cracks forming in glass, and every alien in the courtyard lifted their trembling eyes as those ripples grew wider, deeper, brighter, until they were not ripples at all but doors, gateways, portals opening one after another in a silent cascade that stretched beyond sight, and through each one emerged a shape cold, dark, enormous, the unmistakable silhouette of a warship, then another and another, until the sky was no longer sky but a wall of human steel blotting out the universe and turning the world below into a shadowed cradle of judgment. Gasps, sobs, choking breaths filled the air as thousands of ships took formation. Rows upon rows like an army of ghosts returned from the dead, each ship bearing the same glowing insignia, the burning star within a circle. The symbol the galaxy had hoped it would never see again, the symbol of humanity's wrath, and one alien collapsed to his knees whispering through shaking lips, "This cannot be real. They were extinct, they were myths." But myths did not arrive in fleets. Myths did not darken the sky. Myths did not return with children in their arms. The armored human in the courtyard stood motionless. The three children pressed close against its legs, staring wide-eyed at the endless fleet above, and the smallest girl whispered in awe, not fear now but a fragile wonder, "All of them came for us?" And the armored figure looked down at her, its voice soft, breaking. "All of them came because you cried." And those words shattered the last layer of denial in every alien heart, because no empire, no species, no government in the galaxy had ever answered a child's cry. Not with this. Not with power so vast it turned entire star systems silent. The warship above the city pulsed once. A deep, thunderous heartbeat, and from its core a massive hologram expanded across the sky, visible not just to the city, not just to the planet, but to every world within reach, broadcasting a human face. Not a mask, not armor. An unhelmeted human, pale, scarred, eyes filled with oceans of grief and fire, and when he spoke his voice rolled across the stars like a calm storm. To the galaxy, he began, each word slow, heavy, unshakable. "You broke the sacred vow." The hologram shifted, showing the children in their cage, their tears, their fear, their tiny hands gripping the bars as aliens laughed around them, and millions who watched this broadcast on distant worlds felt their hearts rupture with shame. "Human children," the voice continued, "are not trophies, not pets, not property. They are our future, our breath, our heart." The armored human lowered to one knee beside the children as the voice went on. "When you caged them, you caged the last light of our species." The sky flickered again, showing ancient footage of burning human colonies, shattered cities, empty cradles, and then silence. Centuries of silence when humanity vanished, not because they were defeated, but because they chose to disappear rather than watch their own die. "We asked for help," the voice said, softer now, trembling with pain. And the galaxy looked away. A wave of crushing regret swept through the alien crowd. Creatures who once believed humans were monsters now seeing the truth. They themselves had been the monsters. "We disappeared," the human continued. "Not to survive, but to wait." The hologram zoomed outward, showing the fleet again. Thousands of ships, each glowing brighter, each awakening like a heartbeat spreading through the void. "We waited for the day our children were harmed again." The courtyard fell into suffocating silence, every alien holding their breath, every creature silently praying they could rewind time, undo their cruelty, erase their sin. But there was no going back. The human's voice hardened, cold as iron. "That day has come." A massive tremor rolled through the planet as the human fleet rearranged itself into a vast formation. A halo around the world, locking every escape route, every sky path, every orbit. No ships could flee now. No empire could interfere. No force could stop what was coming. The armored human rose slowly, placing a gentle hand on each child's shoulder, and whispered, "You are not alone anymore." And the children, though shaking, breathed for the first time without terror. Then the voice from the hologram spoke the sentence that broke the galaxy's spine. "This planet is now under human protection." Cries erupted, some of terror, some of relief, some of shame, but none of them mattered, because protection from humanity did not mean mercy, it meant consequence. The warship above the city opened its lower hatch, and a beam of light descended, enveloping the armored figure and the three children in a soft, warm glow, lifting them gently into the air as debris floated upward around them. The ground beneath them cracked, the ruins shifting as if bowing to their ascent. The smallest girl reached upward, whispering, "Are we going home?" And the human answered, voice trembling with something deeper than sorrow, deeper than hope, "Yes, we are going home." As they rose toward the ship, the hologram spoke one final message, echoing through every corner of the galaxy. "If you ever touch a human child again, we will not send ships." The fleet brightened, every vessel glowing like a newborn star. "We will send extinction." And with that, the beam pulled the children and their armored guardian into the warship, the hatch closing behind them like the lid of a tomb, and the entire planet fell into a silence so total it felt like the universe itself was holding its breath. Above, the human fleet began to turn, aligning itself toward a new heading. Not toward retreat, not toward hiding, but toward Earth. The message was clear. The children were going home. Humanity was coming back. And the galaxy had no idea what would happen next. To be continued.